What can you expect from the Cheetah with Tonga Vailoa in Miami? Which new Chiefs receiver represents the best draft value for you at the moment? And do we need to slow our roll on the Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper stacks? We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
I can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you to the Quiet Howlers, and thank you to Rob. Greetings and salutations to all the Bulkaholics and for LAX. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to talk a little bit about the resurgence that you can expect from Allen Robinson, now playing in Los Angeles for the Super Bowl champs. We're going to get into that. We're also going to get into what you should be doing with Leonard Fournette now that we know his destination for 2022 in Tampa Bay. And we'll also talk a little bit about how you should react with the Indianapolis skill position players, knowing that Matt Ryan will be their quarterback and not Carson Wentz, not Jacoby Brissett, not any of the other Indianapolis Colts quarterbacks that were there previously. We're going to get into all that, ladies and gentlemen, tonight. I do want to remind you, we've had a lot of great purchases, a ton of, and by great, I mean a ton of purchases for the Dynasty Orphan teams at myffpc.com/dynasty for sale. We've had a lot of $1 Dynasty teams being sold, a lot of really reduced price Dynasty teams being sold right now within the last week or so. There's still a few left out there, but they're getting pretty scarce. So if you're looking for a great Dynasty deal in 2022, myffpc.com/dynasty for sale is your place to go to for that. With that said, we only have about a little over a month left in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament. So if you want to register for that, $125, you can take a shot at a $25,000 grand prize. That closes April 28th. So make sure you're getting in on that. That is just reached half capacity today. So it's been going. I mean, it's a best ball tournament in February and March. So it's going fast right now. So make sure you're getting in on that. The 2022 FFPC main event has $1 million grand prize. Make sure you're registering for that and take your shot at becoming the first ever FFPC millionaire. Plenty of slow, live, sit and go best ball options, all at myffpc.com. And the Run to Daylight Championship, as well as the Draft Masters, which I got it. And I'll bring in my co-host right now, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell. That Draft Masters that I just signed up for at KFFSC, I know I checked it earlier this morning, and we're looking at there was 2 spots left.
Yes.
Has that sold out, or are there still spots available?
I've been keeping it on the down low because I wanted to come on the show tonight and ask 2 of our listeners to come in and join. KFFFC.com. Go to Draft Masters. It's a $39 entry. It'll get you familiar with the site. If you're an FFPC player and never played in the KFFSC, it will all look very familiar to you, as the FFPC is quite wonderful in sharing some of the platform with me where we can have a league. And you'll enjoy it, and you'll get to play against Eric Balkman and the patron saint of this show, one Hudson Kern-Reeve, and a wonderful Duke's mixture of fantasy players spread throughout the United States that are very anxious to engage in some March Madness competition. Where'd you go, Balky? Oh, Dr. Balkman, it appears that you are frozen in front of my screen. You got an interesting expression on your face, one that I'm sure now is scurried in regret and plugging in cords and wires and all kinds of things. So I will text you and find out if I should roll with the show by myself. Well, the last thing we want is any dead air tonight, and I have lost my esteemed co-host, one Eric Bachman, as I'm sure he scrambles to get things back together. So tonight we're going to look at some pretty cool things across fantasy football and what's been going on in the NFL. I don't want to tip our hands to what's on the roster to talk to tonight, so I'll talk to you a little bit about free agency in the league and what you can expect. There's been a lot of commentary about there's never been a year like this. And you know what? You're right. There hasn't been a year like this. And I've been discussing it with a lot of people in the industry. And it's sort of it's Balky, are you back?
I'm here, man. Sorry about that.
Oh, I was just getting ready to explain a good 10 minutes of why I think free agency is moving in the way that it is. And you know what? The listeners are going to be so happy they didn't have to listen to that. So let's return to our roster and move right along with the show.
Well, and I'll just say this too, like the ones that are in this, that if you want to join this KFFAC Draft Masters, this is a slow draft. When it fills up, you're looking at Mike Mattingly, FFPC player that's going to be in this. Mark Moyer, one of the greatest draft masters out there. You can learn a lot from him. Who's in right now? Hudson Kern-Reeve in the YouTube chat room. He's going to be participating in this. I'm looking at the venerable team Porkies participating in this as well. So obviously you want to compete against them. Vince Staffolino, who's been a guest on this show multiple times. And of course, the trophy husband himself, Rob Fetcher, also in this. So, and many other KFFSC, FFPC superstars. So make sure you're getting in on that, KFFSC.com. All right. So, Farrell, while we don't have a guest tonight, and our guest, we had to reschedule sort of last minute for next week because of I'll say technical difficulties, and we'll leave it at that. We'll talk a little bit about it next week.
People would believe that. Yes,
yeah, exactly. Yes, they would. Which is fine. This and we are looking at all the massive shifts that happen with quarterbacks, receivers, a couple of running backs have changed the ADP landscape as well. We'll get into it right at the top with probably, in my opinion, and I said this on my local show here in Northeast Wisconsin, this in my life, Reggie White signed with Green Bay. I was most shocked that the Packers ended up deciding to trade Davonte Adams to your Las Vegas Raiders, who will now be catching passes from his college teammate Derek Carr. It was a trade involving the 2022 first and second round picks for Las Vegas. This is according to Adam Schefter on Twitter. And
we'll let everyone, we'll let Balky know that he's freezing up visually and now verbally. And he might be able to hear me. Boom. Back to me. Balky's going to talk a little bit about that Raider selection. You know, it takes paying attention to what's going on in the college world and where players come from. Many people kept talking to me about oh, you're back. Are you there, Balky? You are regularly freezing up, sir, both visually and audio. There you are.
Davonte Adams was going off as the number one overall. Well, I shouldn't say this. He wasn't. Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp were going ahead of him this year. And I think some of the trepidation that went into that was knowing that Adams may wide receiver 5, right? And this is interesting. This is the last 7 days, and we'll give a shout out to Darren Armani from FantasyMojo.com for covering this. But with the ADP, now he is going right behind Tyreek Hill, the brand new Miami Dolphin, which we'll get into in a is going to be putting up in Las Vegas compared to what he put up with or put up in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Now, what's he going to be doing with Derek Carr in Las Vegas?
But Balky, you've been coming in and out on us there, and you might want to check your connection and make sure that you are coming through to all the listeners, because we're only getting, you're freezing up both in the picture and in the audio. So what do I expect from Mr. Adams in Las Vegas? I expect a continued dominant play from the NFL's number one receiver. I don't believe he will miss a beat. I think he will be fantastic with Derek Carr. I think he might even be freed to run different kind of routes perhaps that will not take such a burden and beating to his body. There were many, many times this year that I was surprised that he could get up after some of the receptions that he made. He is an elite receiver, unlike we've seen in the league. He separates himself every week, every game, almost every play. I've never seen this guy take a play off. He's a thrill to watch. He will elevate a team that last year, many people are surprised about this, but Derek Carr was in the top 5 passers in the NFL with total yards, 4,800 yards. It shut down in the red zone for him for many reasons last year, leading to Hunter Renfrow having a team leading 9 touchdown catches. There's 600 passes to go around here. You don't need to be concerned about Waller. He should still remain as the number 3 tight end off the board. Renfrow, people that believe in Renfrow, we said it last week on the show. We don't think we'll get as much touchdowns. We think we've seen our best Hunter Renfrow, but what you're going to get from Hunter Renfrow the rest of the way will be very, very good. It's an exciting offense and a wonderful year forthcoming in the AFC West. I can continue to speak on the Raiders. You know, Josh Jacobs is an interesting Raider. And in the type of drafts that we're doing now, especially in the Best Ball Slim tournament in the FFPC, he's a Raider that I don't particularly think is worth his value where he's being drafted. However, if we were in a classic league or as we move to the main event, he then becomes somewhat of a value pick in the 4th round. You've got to remember the rules and the process and the league type that you're playing in. Jacobs, a continual steady Eddie. And with this passing attack, with the Raiders, if they can get ahead and not be playing catch-ups in some of these games, Jacobs may be the running back that Carr hands the ball to, and he gets some of those 4th quarter yards that will actually propel him to some 100 yards games. Those have been missing in the Raiders' backfield here in the last couple of years.
Tonight, I'm not sure what's going on. Farrell, yes, you were talking about Davonte Adams. How does this affect guys like? Well, it obviously makes Bryan Edwards non-draftable at this point. How does this affect just specifically Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow? And by the way, while I ask you that, I'll just give you the mojo on them real quick. Darren Waller in FFPC drafts, tight end 4 at the 301 over the last 7 days. Some of these drafts taking place after the Adams trade, some of them taking place before the Adams trade. Hunter Renfrow, wide or at the 7-11. So where do these guys go in FFPC drafts now?
This is about right. What you've got to look forward to in Adams is we just talked about it. And I don't know if any of the listeners could hear me, but we'll just review it again very quickly. There's 600 passes on this team. Adams will continue to do well as the preeminent wide receiver in this league. His route running will be different. Waller will take over some of the middle. Adams will take over some deeper and intermediate routes, which may save his body in the long term. Hunter Renfrow with the middle cleared out will be largely a possession receiver, but a very good one, and he's very good with the ball after the catch. This quarterback, Carr, 4,800 yards last year, put him in the top 5 of all quarterbacks. 3 of the top 5 yardage quarterbacks come from the AFC West, and Carr is amongst them. It's a situation where the red zone, which was the place where the Raiders failed last year, the red zone will be much different now with Davonte Adams on the team. And the coaching staff, obviously, is a big aspect of that. A healthy Jacobs, a better offensive line. Things are looking up fantasy-wise for the Raiders. I think Renfro's about in the right place. You cannot overdraft Adams. If you believe that he was a Green Bay Packer draft pick in the first round as a receiver, draft him now in the first round.
Really? You're still taking him in the first round with Derek Carr?
Well, of course, nothing. There's again, Balky, 4,800 yards. There's nothing particularly wrong with Derek Carr, and he might be joining a quarterback that at this point in his career, I know this is heresy for you to believe, but if you looked at some of the downfield passing numbers from Aaron Rodgers last year, they were somewhat suspect, the downfield accuracy. Now, it's hard to look past the fact that he almost completed 70% of his passes, but when he threw the ball over 20, 25 yards, that percentage dropped off substantially. This is a big target that wins all the contested balls in Davonte Adams. It's going to be Davonte Adams will make Derek Carr one wonderful quarterback. Oh, now I've frozen Balky into just like a mound of salt there. It's somewhat biblical. Everyone, I'm going to call him on the phone just to make sure that he didn't keel over. And
I do apologize. I have no idea what's going on. It is what it is. We've talked about Adams to death here.
I was calling you there. Have you been able to hear me when you freeze
yes,
up?
You're coming through perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Let's move on and talk about the other.
Your head. Do you think because you move your head?
Should I keep it still?
Yeah, you should just stay still. Just stay boxed up.
Stay in the camera frame. Exactly. The Dolphins get Tyreek Hill this week. And as shocked as I was about yes, you did. Yeah. As shocked as I was about the Adams trade, I was even more shocked about the Tyreek Hill trade. 5 draft picks go to Miami in exchange for Tyreek, or go to Kansas City from Miami in exchange for Hill. This according to Adam Schefter on Twitter. It's pick 29, pick 50 in the second round, a 4th round pick in 2022, and then a 4th and a 6th next year going to Kansas City. The Dolphins also give Tyreek Hill 4 years, $120 million and $72 million guaranteed. He's basically going to be the Devontae Parker replacement, a massive upgrade over Devontae Parker, who is probably going to be cut, probably going to be playing for a different team. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Mike Gesicki. Those are the primary pass catchers for Tua Tagovailoa. Now, here's what's – and Farrell, maybe you can explain this to me. Mike McDaniel emphasized the running game. He goes out and gets Chase Edmonds. He goes out and gets Raheem Mostert, right? And then they go out and give all this draft capital up for Tyreek Hill. I'm a little confused at the direction of the Dolphins, and we need to know this for fantasy. Is Edmonds and Mostert, are they now draft values in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament? Is Tyreek Hill overrated in not only dynasty fantasy football, but also with the Never Too Early tournament? How do you view this Dolphins offense going forward now that we know Tyreek Hill is sort of the focal point of the pass catchers?
I passed on Tyreek Hill in the middle of the second round only because I wanted to put together a team with Najee Harris and Waller. And the guy right after me took Hill. Well, from a coaching standpoint, you're moving into your first year and you're wrapping up tremendous talent into the room. And then you're going to figure out how to use it. And just because you want to run the ball doesn't mean you're going to be able to run the ball without a passing attack. This team last year had no rushing attack. The short passes to Waddle was their rushing attack. Waddle is the player here that gets the biggest question mark because you wonder how Tua will deal with these two elite receivers, but it's the coach, and the coach is recognized as one of the coming coaches in the league. He'll find a way to make these guys consistent in this offense, and both of them approach the 100 catches. In Waddle's case, it's not going to be potentiality of the prolific season that we saw because he's going to stay with a lot of the underneath stuff and have to make it with his feet. But Hill will be all over the field. It's a wonderful, wonderful situation for this first-year coach, which gets all these tools on a team that was perhaps dysfunctional from the front office and the coaching situation. Obviously, we saw all the problems that surfaced with Brian Flores as we move throughout the year. It's a new start in Miami. You can just go on and on about it. Hey, does Gesicki have a bump? He should. What that middle of the field with these kind of passing threats and what they'll have to do to corral these receivers. Gesicki now becomes a player that I would definitely want to target at his current value, which has not seemed to bump up that much since this trade was made. You want to talk about the Kansas City side of this? Oh, I think we've lost him again. I'll talk about the Kansas City side of this while Balky remains a bit frozen. Kansas City now has 12 draft picks, none of them in the 5th or 6th round, 3 7s, and the rest through the top 4 rounds. And it's impressive to say, oh, there's so much new talent coming into this team. And a lot of it perhaps will be on defense, but this team won't you can't take a team that is this good and have 12 rookies make this roster. So what they're going to do is they're going to package these rookies together, and they are going to move up. And Balky at the receiver position, there are some true receivers that you can look at, and you can pretty much assess the fact that these guys are going to be consistent Pro Bowlers, consistent contributors in the league at an elite level. This is a tremendous year for wide receivers. It's a tremendous year for running backs, somewhat unexpectedly so.
You talked about Mike Gesicki, and you mentioned how he wasn't, moving up at all. And I am a little surprised at that. Tight end 12 still. I mean, how many emails did we get about Gesicki versus Ertz, right? And they're still right next to each other in tight end 12, tight end 13 at the end of the 8th round. And I think that's interesting. Tyreek Hill, and I talked about this when we were talking about Davonte Adams. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 4, going up at the 202, so still a turn pick. And you mentioned how you passed on him to get Waller in the second, which I totally respect, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm still a little – okay, here's the thing. If Hill is going to be good and Gesicki should be moving up, and we know Waddle's a stud, doesn't Tagovailoa start borderlining as like a top 12 pick in fantasy drafts? Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
And he would be a terrific draft pick in any of the formats, especially the best ball. And as we talked about the best ball slim, never too early tournament. It's a lot of words there. We want players that are playing well at the end of the season. Tua is probably the quarterback that has the best chance to be playing significantly better at the end than he even will at the start.
Tagovailoa, by the way, quarterback 18 right now, going at the 11:08. That is right before Trevor Lawrence and Ryan Tannehill, actually. But he still has not surpassed Justin Fields and Kirk Cousins. Those would be the next two quarterbacks in mind if he is going to make a move going forward up the hill with Hill. Okay. Hudson Kern-Reeve in the YouTube chat right now has been blowing us up with all these Kansas City Chiefs questions, and he should, because I think this is a hard thing to wrap my head around right now. Let's talk about another former Packer leaving the friendly confines of Lambeau Field to go take his talents to Kansas City. Marquez Valdescantli, now a Kansas City Chief, 3 years, $30 million, $18 million in the first 2 years. The maximum of the deal, $36 million. Marquez Valdescantli missed a couple of games this past, well, more than a couple of games in 2021, and only had 430 yards this past season. But if you remember back to 2020, he led the league in yards perception, and his career yards perception in 4 seasons, 17.5 yards. Now, I don't think there's any question that this is an overpay. And I'll wrap and I'll tell you what, let's do this, Farrell. Let's tie it into the other signing that the Kansas City Chiefs made at the wide receiver position. Juju Smith-Schuster, 1 year, $10.75 million. Okay. Smith-Schuster actually announced this deal on Twitter. So the Chiefs and his agent were so excited to announce this that Juju Smith-Schuster broke the news himself. Not Tom Pelissero, not Adam Schefter, Smith-Schuster. That's interesting. Okay. So Travis Kelce, target hog. Juju Smith-Schuster, I thought was going to be a target hog. Now I'm not so sure with Valdescantli. I know he brings a speed element to Kansas City, but who is the wide receiver one for Kansas City? Is it MVS or is it JJS?
The wide receiver one for Kansas City, and it'll take Chiefs fans 2 or 3 years to go through this. They'll say he's still in Miami. They'll say he's down there. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is a wonderful player, young age, a slot receiver. He's going to do what you expect most slot receivers to do, and he's going to be pretty physical with it now that he's recovered from the shoulder injury. Let's focus on Scantling because that's what is interesting. Do we have does Darren have a mojo for us on MVS at this point? Balky's gone to sleep on me again, so I'll continue. In the drafts that I've played, and I am now on my 6th never too early contest best ball team. Scantling has been completely off the radar in all drafts, and he's moved up somewhat, but it's not very aggressive from what I can tell. And let me talk about what you're getting here. It's a player that Balky alluded to it. It's a player whose skill set has not been utilized or hasn't had the necessity to be utilized with the Green Bay Packers, except when they need him. It's been pretty fascinating. If you want to go and look at some YouTube highlights of this player, you'll see how often, be it Minnesota, be it Jacksonville, Detroit, games where Green Bay were trailing, and especially one where Rodgers threw out of the end zone to midfield. I think that one was against Indianapolis, and Scantling made a wonderful catch. Scantling is 6'4". At the combine, he was a 4.3 guy. He's clocked at running 22 miles an hour. So he gets that body moving. He gets it moving and moves quickly. He looks, as a long strider, he looks like when you look on film that he's not as fast as a Tyreek Hill, but he is. And he's got an 80-inch wingspan, and he wins the contested balls. This is going to be your number one receiver. And guess what, guys? They're not going to have to beat him up over the middle. They're going to send him deep, and it's going to be a thing of beauty. Think Mike Williams when he's really, really connecting with it. He's going to be that type of receiver. I think Juju Smith-Schuster contractually is betting on himself. He's taking a 1-year deal, and he'll say, I'll come back and take another deal after I have a big season. MVS is being rewarded for being a good, solid NFL player who has not shifted his career into the next gear. That's going to happen in Kansas City now with all the different throwing angles and the way Mahomes can keep the ball active. As we see Mahomes keeping the play going, you can't defense a player this fast and this size while Mahomes is doing all the scrambling around to get in throwing position. Watching Kansas City Chiefs is is going to be a real gift this year.
What about Nicole Hardman, as Hudson Kern points out in the YouTube chat? What do we do with Hardman this year? And I'll just before you answer that, Farrell, the mojo on him right now, as far as his ADP in the Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, wide receiver 59 at the 1304, right behind and Marquez Valdescantli, who's obviously going to go up. MVS will go up with more drafts being done, but he's right ahead of George Pickens, the rookie, Jacoby Myers, and Jamison Williams, another rookie. Nicole Hardman, what's his value right now for redraft purposes?
A talented support player that if you're stacking Chiefs in a best ball, you're in really good shape. If you're playing in a classic or the main event, I think at this point in time, it's a handcuff player and a player that you won't know when to start. He's a very good player. As we continue to talk about, I got to keep bringing the Raiders in the conversation. Demarcus Robinson now is a Las Vegas Raider. And you would expect also the Chiefs, with this talented group of wide receivers, is to go find another one that they can groom. Look, you need 5 or 6 very good receivers on a football team. Nicole Hardman is a very good receiver, but Hardman is a player that we can't really count on to deliver for us in fantasy ball.
Let's talk a little bit more Chiefs here. And I got an interesting dynasty trade offer this past week in one of my KFFSC dynasties. And I can't remember who offered it to me, but it was the 207 in exchange for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, this was before the MVS signing. This was before the Tyreek Hill trade. And I kind of was like, I just kind of want to see where the value lies, because I think Darrell Williams is.
Oh, where'd you go, Boggy? Why'd you leave us again? I know where you were going with that question. Should you have done that deal? Should you have taken that deal? It's hard to see. And, I just said with Hardman, he's not going to be a big contributor in fantasy football. But, what if we come out and we see 4 wide in this offense? Maybe it begins to look in Andy Reid's wild mind. He has a situation where all these receivers are on the field at all the time. It could happen. A lot of it, McKinnon, commonly mistaken for McKissick, at least one late night when I was drafting, that probably should say no more about that. But nevertheless, he brings an interesting aspect.
Here's what I was going to.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, so Farrell, here's, and I beg your pardon if you already announced this, but here's what I wanted to bring up. Nate Taylor's article on the Chiefs for The Athletic, who he covers Kansas City Chiefs. He says the Chiefs offense will utilize running backs such as Clyde Edwards-Helaire more as receivers. And this is not necessarily why I turned this trade down, but I just kind of wanted to see what would happen with the Kansas City backfield. And they could still sign Jerick McKinnon, and maybe I'll be a fool for not accepting this trade. But Nate Taylor said Hardman is going to take over as the primary downfield threat. This is, again, prior to the MVS trade. So we believe that MVS is going to be the downfield threat. Kelsey's going to get a lot of targets in the middle of the field, but the Chiefs are going to have to be more, quote, methodical rather than having to rely on this, what he calls a quick strike attack with Tyreek Hill, which we've seen. How many times do we see Tyreek Hill just, have these massive games for these corners that couldn't keep up with him? So if that is the case, and, we know if we're looking at drafting Edwards-Helaire right now, we know McKinnon could be in the picture. We know Damian Williams is in Atlanta. We know Darrell Williams is not going to be back. As we look to draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, and you hear this report from Nate Taylor, how much stock do we put into this about Edwards-Helaire maybe not having the greatest fantasy season, but from a fantasy full PPR season where he can collect a lot of targets, maybe this is a good zero RB guy here to look at.
I think so too. And Edwards-Helaire is dropping to the point where he's becoming very attractive to to take a shot with him and see what happens. He's a valuable player in this offense. And whenever you can get a player in this offense, you're making a good move. Now, the writer here is taking the jump. They're pulling the cake out of the oven before it gets baked, Balky. You got to expect these moves and understand these moves. We're a long way away from free agency being over, and we've got a draft to go to where we just talked about the fact that Kansas City has 12 draft picks. They won't use them all. They'll package them. They'll move up in the draft. They'll get the players they want. Fascinating year to what the roster looks like. Edwards-Helaire will have a role. What's his Armani right now? Balky perhaps cannot hear me as I request the mojo, but what I've noticed is Helaire has continued dropping in the drafts. And so at some point, you're going to want to pull the trigger on this player, wait it out, and hope that he will make the contribution, especially in the best ball slims. Double Balky.
I beg your pardon, ladies and gentlemen, and we will cut this broadcast short pretty quick here. Though there's one other topic I want to get to.
Balky, I think it's fate. I think you definitely have. Maybe we can come back and do it tomorrow.
Is watching. And if you are focusing on Browns as part of your high stakes fantasy teams this year, Watson will affect all of them. The NFL discipline of Watson, depending upon what happens with these civil suits and how hard Watson wants to fight them. Maybe there's no suspension. Maybe there's a small suspension. Maybe there's a big suspension on this. Anything is possible at this point. If as Florio said on ProFootballTalk.com, he said if Watson does go to the exempt list, it's essentially paid leave. But after that, he could go on an unpaid suspension after that. Here's Florio's quote. I want to read in its entirety because it's important. So far, the signals from Watson's camp point to fighting all of the cases and trying to win them. Once they realize that the league may decide to keep him from playing until the legal fight has ended, Watson and we look at what Cleveland's options are. We know they're only paying him $1 million this year. We know they traded for Jacoby Brissett to come in and potentially be the guy for maybe multiple games. What do you do with him if you're drafting best ball teams right now? What do you do with Watson? What do you do with Cooper? What do you do with the running backs and then Njoku and any other Cleveland skill position player, knowing that this is hanging over the team right now and it's going to affect best ball leagues?
A few weeks ago, you asked what to do, how to win a league, and I would say draft Watson. You asked what to do with those extra 2 quarterback spots. We went from 18 players to 19 and 20. Did we take an extra quarterback? Did we take an extra tight end? The extra quarterback for my team has been Watson. There's a number of options that are forthcoming with this until there was a good sign today and that there would be no further criminal charges. We really don't know what happened, Balky. No one really knows at this point. I don't know what the commissioner's office will handle that. The players union should have a strong role in this, as they always do. When we get to the bottom of this, I don't think you can keep this player off the field for 2 years in a row. The exempt list does not hold water with me. I don't think you can do that situation. If he during these civil, and I'm about ready to get in about ready to get in quickly over my head in the legalese, but in the state of Texas, these civil cases, if they bring anything to light, they're likely to do it in some type of sealed type of testimony. And at some point in time, we have to move on from this. And this player lives with this hanging over his head throughout his career. If he ever does see the field, I think he's going to be fantastic because he's
Right.
Right or wrong, he's experienced a great deal. Now, what do you do about drafting the other players? I drafted Donovan Peoples-Jones late, just in the excitement of realizing that he has a new quarterback. Where all those players are going, all of them have question marks, and all of them have players on the draft to the immediately before and immediately after him that are equally attractive. You wait until the double digits come and you can't stand it anymore, and then you pick one. That's how I would work with the receiving core of the Cleveland Browns, which means I would be out of the Cooper business.
Exactly. Yes, you would. You would be. And I was kind of excited because in that KFFSC draft that I participated in a couple of weeks ago, I was excited. I drafted Cooper knowing that, and I think I said this on the show, knowing that this is when he was still a Cowboy. He's either going to be part of a big elite offense or he was going to go to an offense that was going to make him a big part of their offense. Mm-hmm. And I know that's Cleveland's plan A, but plan B might be Jacoby Brissett throwing focus on Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt rather than, bombing it to Amari Cooper a lot. We shall see on that. All right. I lied. I want to get to one last thing before we sign off.
Try.
Okay. We will try. We're going to give it the old college try. The Rams.
Okay.
They sign Allen Robinson, 3 years, $47 million. This is according to Tom Pelissero on Twitter. Had an awful 2021, obviously, but he gets $30 million guaranteed from the Super Bowl champs, right? They end up trading Robert Woods to the Titans for a 6th-round pick, not this year, but now Odell Beckham's still unsigned. The Rams have been very outspoken that they want to bring Beckham back, and there's a lot of people out there making the argument the Rams would not have won the Super Bowl without Odell Beckham's contributions, which I think you can make a strong argument for that. That said, he's coming off the torn ACL. It's going to be the Kupp and Robinson show for Los Angeles here going forward. All right. Allen Robinson is still 28 years old. You could still say he's kind of still in the prime of his career. So, Farrell, I want to ask you this. Knowing what he did in Chicago or what he didn't do in Chicago, what are your expectations for him catching balls from Matthew Stafford? And then flip side, Robert Woods is now the new number 2 with Julio Jones being cut in Tennessee. Robert Woods is the new number 2 for Ryan Tannehill. How do you view these players for the best ball tournament going on with the FFPC right now? Are they buys? Are these potential league winners? Or are they guys to stay away from?
In Los Angeles, this was a head scratcher. This was not the kind of head scratcher that the Zay Jones acquisition at Jacksonville was, but I thought this was with everything we said about the wide receiver position, I don't know as if I would have done this deal. They see something in Robinson that obviously is there because there's a lot of teams, a lot of general managers that covet this player, but it has been a long time since he has contributed in a role that Robert Woods had in deciding and having input in the decision of where he would go. He wanted to go to Tennessee, and that's a smart move for him. We talked about this team last week as being a play action team, as a run pass option team. They require a wide receiver to block. They require a wide receiver to run concise, expert routes. This player is always the most loved receiver by any quarterback that works with him because he's always in the right place. He's always there at the right time. He always wins the contested pass. This player will be very, very good. I saw some commentary that he wouldn't be a big fantasy producer. I think that's completely wrong. He'll take some of the traction that Brown has established. He'll take some of that attention away from Brown and give the opportunity for Tennessee to be more dimensional in the passing game. He's a tough blocker. He's a good player. He's a great player in the locker room. He's going to help elevate the Titans at every position. He's going to keep that ball moving in the red zone more effectively as well for this team. I like the acquisition. I like the player that the Rams lost more than the player that the Rams added. And don't forget, Balky, I'm still a Van Jefferson guy. Oh, my goodness, we've lost him again.
Sorry, Farrell.
There you go.
Here we go. Last question from the chat room tonight as we wrap things up on this. And
is it from Hudson Kern Reed?
It is from Hudson Kern Reed. And it is not a fantasy football question. This is something we talked about off air last week. Oscars this Sunday night. He wants to know, is it the new West Side Story or is it Belfast for Best Picture? And I brought it up with him. I said, because we talked about this off air, I know you like licorice pizza as well. So with and he brings up Spider-Man No Way Home. That's not going to be winning anything. Well, it won't win any of the big ones, but and I don't know how many films you've actually watched this year. Is it just licorice pizza? Do you have any opinion on any others or no?
Well, I have an opinion about Oscars. What an event it used to be. We used to all watch it with great excitement, and what it's become somewhat of a nothing event here in the last couple of years. And I've actually turned. I'm trying to think of the name of the awards show. I think it's the Independent Spirit Awards.
Yep, Spirit Awards.
I watched that one because Aubrey Plaza has been the hostess for the last 2 years of that show. So I watched that one, but I really don't know. I enjoyed Licorice Pizza because it was a snapshot of the 70s in LA. And when I was growing up in the 70s, I was curious what was going on in LA and didn't know when I would ever get there. It took me another decade to figure that out after I got out of college. So I enjoyed that one, but I don't think that's a contender. I'll probably have to, unfortunately, be catching up on all the Oscar films via streaming after we know who won.
And listen, we know who won tonight, and that was not my internet and not my internet connection. I apologize. I'm going to take my L. We'll get it better for next, better internet connection and do it better. Farrell, thank you so much for participating in tonight's show. I really appreciate it. We will talk to you again next Friday with an extra special guest that we've been trying to get on the last couple of weeks. We're going to get him on next Friday. Be good this weekend. I will talk to you.
Tonight's saving grace, Balky, is that we did not have a guest to frustrate.
Yeah, you are right, my friend. You are absolutely right. Be good, man. Enjoy your weekend.
No St. Peter's. See ya.
The definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Want to remind everybody tonight, and we'll get to your emails next week. I apologize. I couldn't get to them tonight. And I guarantee we will have a better show for you next week. Thanks, Farrell Elliott, FFPC, Rob Rice, and of course, each and every one of you. We're back next Friday, 10/9 Central, with $100,000 Football Guys Playoff Challenge winner Chris Ballard will join us on this program, talk about how he built that lineup and what he's expecting in 2022. Really under the radar, talented high stakes player. So very excited to have him on. We've been trying to get him on for the better part of a month. And the stars should align next week, so we'll have him on for sure. Dozens of Dynasty Orphans are still available. MyFFP deals are going to go away here pretty shortly, ladies and gentlemen. Register for the Never Too Early FFPC Best Ball Tournament. Plenty of slow, live, sit-and-go best ball options, all at myffpc.com. You can join the Run to Daylight Championship at kffsc.com right now as well. And, of course, register your weekend officially starts now.
Around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Yourself.
named Toulouse. Kids, I would be remiss if I didn't mention they wanted to give they already got a shout out. My daughter's gotten a shout out. My son's gotten a shout out. I want to shout out Toulouse the cat that we're house sitting for right now. So hey Toulouse, I know you were probably watching this